Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if working from home is actually better for your mood than going into the office? Well, this fascinating study dives deep into that question. So the big question here is about our daily well-being and how it changes depending on where we work. Are we happier, sadder, more stressed, or more relaxed when we're at home compared to when we're in the office? And does our personality or even our age change how we experience these different work environments? It is a really common debate these days, especially with so many of us working in hybrid ways. The researchers wanted to see if there were actual measurable differences in how people feel day to day depending on whether they were at their home office or at the company office. Basically, they looked at people who do both kinds of work working from home some days and in the office on other days. They had them keep a daily diary for a whole month. Using some pretty cool math models, they compared how people felt on their home office days versus their regular office days. And what they found was super interesting. People generally reported feeling better in terms of their mood on home office days. But they also felt more lonely. Interestingly, their overall satisfaction levels were pretty much the same, no matter where they worked. They also looked at personality traits using something called the Hexaco model, which is a way to describe personality, and some other personal details. They found that these things didn't change the well-being differences that much. The one specific trait, emotionality, did make loneliness worse on home office days for some people. Age didn't seem to play a role in these differences for most people. So the environment itself definitely seems to make a difference, but personality and age had a less significant impact than you might think. What this suggests is that these feelings about working location are pretty common across different kinds of people. Now, the idea behind this research is rooted in something called person-environment fit theory. Think of it like this. Just like some people fit in better with certain groups or in certain cities, people also fit better with different work environments because everyone is unique. Their needs and their personality traits can make them thrive in one setting while struggling in another. And the workplace is a huge part of our lives, right? So understanding how differences between, say, working at home versus working at an office affect us is super important. They pointed out that a lot of research compares people who only work from home to people who only work in the office. But that is becoming less common. Most people are doing a mix, and that is what this study really zeroes in on. They want to understand the within-person differences. That means comparing how one individual feels on a home office day versus an office day, rather than comparing two different groups of people. This helps get rid of biases that might come from just comparing different kinds of workers. So here is how they did it. They got a bunch of people, 516 total, who were planning to work both from home and from the office at least once a week. For about a month, they used an online survey, and at the end of each workday, participants would fill out a quick questionnaire. This went on for 4 weeks. They asked about where they worked, their mood, their satisfaction, and how lonely they felt, among other things. Think of it like a daily check in with yourself about how your work location is affecting your feelings. They also gathered information about personality, age, and other personal details at the beginning of the study. The final group they analyzed had about 553 adults, with an average age of 41, a little over half were women. Most of them had a good level of education, which makes sense because hybrid work is more common in professional jobs. They were mostly full-time employees. One of the key things they measured was working location. At the start of each daily survey, people just had to say where they worked that day. Options included home, workplace, another place, day off, or sick. Then they measured well, being in a few ways. For affect, they used a 6-item scale to capture things like how energetic, calm, and generally positive someone felt that day. For satisfaction, they asked about satisfaction with life, job, living situation, family, finances, and social relationships, rating it on a scale from 0 to 100. And for loneliness, they used a few questions to get a sense of how often people felt socially isolated or left out. They also measured personality using the Hexaco model, which looks at traits like honesty, humility, emotionality, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness. And then there were socio-demographic variables like age, health conditions, gender, education, income, working hours, and whether they lived with a partner or children. To analyze all this data, they used fancy mathematical tools called multi-level structural equation modeling. Don't worry too much about the jargon, but the important part is that these methods allow researchers to account for the fact that people's feelings can change from day to day, but also that people are different from each other. It helps them separate out what is due to the daily situation, like where you're working, from what is due to your stable personality traits or other personal characteristics. They were also looking for interaction effects, meaning if the effect of working location on well-being depended on things like personality. Okay, let's get to the exciting part. What did they find? This is where things get really interesting. When comparing home office days to workplace days, they found some clear differences. For mood, things like valence, calmness, and arousal, people reported feeling better on home office days. This means they felt more positive, more relaxed, and more energetic when they were working from home. But here is the flip side. They also reported feeling significantly more lonely on home office days compared to workplace days. So, more good feelings in terms of mood, but a dip in social connection. What is fascinating is that overall satisfaction levels didn't actually change significantly between home and office days. This suggests that while our daily mood might be affected by our location, our broader sense of satisfaction with life or our job might be more stable or influenced by other things. This is where they looked at whether personality and demographics changed these patterns. When it came to personality, they found that extroversion was consistently linked to all well-being indicators, meaning more extroverted people generally reported higher well-being. This aligns with what many studies show. However, the interaction effects where personality changed the difference between home and office days were quite limited. The most significant finding here was with emotionality. People who scored higher on emotionality felt more lonely on home office days compared to workplace days. This suggests that if you're more prone to feeling negative emotions, the isolation of home office might amplify that feeling of loneliness. Looking at this table, you can see the main effects of personality, for example. Extroversion is linked to better valence, calmness, arousal, and satisfaction, and less loneliness overall. That is a pretty consistent finding in personality research. The HIW columns show the effect on the difference between home and workplace days. Notice how most of these are really small or not significant, except for emotionality S impact on loneliness. LHW is 0.13, which is actually quite strong in this model. This means that while personality affects our general well-being, it doesn't dramatically change how we feel based on whether we are at home or in the office, with that one exception for loneliness and emotionality. They also looked at socio-demographic factors. Things like having more health problems and longer working hours seem to be linked to lower mood. Living with a partner was associated with higher satisfaction, which is a consistent finding in relationship research. Interestingly, men reported slightly higher loneliness than women, though this effect was described as small. But here is the key takeaway for this question. For the most part, these socio-demographic factors didn't significantly moderate the differences in well-being between home and office days either. For instance, whether someone lived with children didn't change their mood differences as much as you might expect, though it did affect arousal levels. Now, what about age? This is a big one since the workforce is aging. They found that older participants generally reported better mood and lower loneliness. That is good news. However, and this is a crucial finding, age did not moderate the differences in well-being between days spent at home versus at the workplace. So, even though older people might generally feel better, the change in how they feel when they switch from home to office or vice versa was similar to younger people. So, to sum up, the study found that working from home generally leads to better mood but increased loneliness, while satisfaction stays pretty much the same. And these general trends weren't dramatically changed by most personality traits or by age. This is a pretty significant finding, especially when you consider the theories. The idea of person-environment fit suggests that personality should matter more. But the researchers propose a couple of reasons for this limited moderation. One, in the post-pandemic era, people have more freedom to shape their work environment and activities to match their personalities. For example, an extroverted person might schedule more virtual social events on home days to compensate for less in-person interaction. 2. Their approach focused on within-person differences, which is more precise and might not inflate the apparent influence of personality, like studies comparing entirely different groups of people can. Let's revisit the mood findings. Participants felt better all around, more content, calmer, more relaxed, and more energetic when working from home. This is likely due to factors like fewer interruptions, more autonomy, and no commute. The researchers suggest any initial challenges with home office setups might have been overcome by the time of the study. The increased loneliness at home is a consistent finding and likely stems from reduced informal social interactions that happen naturally in an office setting. This is something to be mindful of. The lack of difference in satisfaction is also interesting. It might be because satisfaction is a broader construct encompassing multiple life domains, and the impact of work location on just one day might not significantly shift overall satisfaction levels. As expected, extroversion was strongly linked to overall well-being. The more surprising finding was how little personality moderated the differences between work locations. Only emotionalities linked to increased loneliness at home was a significant interaction effect. This suggests that while personality shapes our baseline well-being, our daily environment might have a more universal effect on us than previously thought, or people are simply adapting to make it work for them. The fact that age didn't moderate these workplace differences is also noteworthy. While older adults seem to generally experience better mood and less loneliness, the switch between home and office doesn't seem to impact them differently than younger adults in terms of the change in well-being. This suggests that the benefits and drawbacks of each environment are experienced relatively similarly across the adult lifespan. In this regard, the socio-demographic findings mostly align with existing research. Longer work hours and more health issues can negatively impact mood, and having a partner generally boosts satisfaction. The subtle gender difference in loneliness is an area for further exploration. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, it suggests that working from home can indeed boost your mood, making you feel more positive and energetic. That is a clear win. However, you need to be aware that it might also increase feelings of loneliness. This is especially important for people high in emotionality, as the isolation might hit them harder. For employers, this means that while offering remote work can be great for employee mood, they should also consider ways to mitigate the potential for increased loneliness. This could involve fostering more social connection within remote teams or offering more opportunities for in-person interaction. The findings also suggest that these well-being differences are quite widespread and not heavily dependent on specific personality types or age, which could make policies around remote work more broadly applicable. Of course, no study is perfect. One limitation here is that we don't know if people chose to work from home or if it was mandated. If it was their choice, they might have already been in a more positive state. Also, they didn't have data on prior home office experience. Future research could explore how the quality and type of social interactions happen differently in different work settings, and how specific tasks are affected by location. In conclusion, this study paints a nuanced picture. Working from home generally boosts mood but can increase loneliness, while satisfaction remains largely unaffected. Personality and age play a smaller role in moderating these specific daily differences than one might expect, suggesting a generally adaptable experience with working environments. It highlights the importance of considering both the positive and negative aspects of remote work and implementing strategies to support employee well-being in all settings. And for those of you who love to dig into the details, the researchers have made all their data, materials, and analysis scripts publicly available. You can find them at That is a fantastic step towards transparency in science. So, what are your thoughts? Do you find your mood improves when you work from home but you miss the social connection? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more psychology insights. We'll see you next time.